It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
All right, Brian, let's talk now a little bit about top 1% in their 50s. And I think that this is really, really interesting because in your 50s, you're either likely at the financial independence point or you're beginning to move towards the financial independence point. And what I think is interesting, we're going to share the numbers. But I think some of the things that they figured out and some of the hacks for 50-year-olds aren't just for those folks in the 1%. You may be in financial independence or approaching financial independence and nowhere near the 1%, and that's okay. The 1% is nothing more than sort of a made-up number that's statistically significant based on the entire population. You may be in the 40th percent and have plenty of money to be able to do the things that you want. So I would not tell you to be discouraged if this is not what your financial circumstance looks like, but be encouraged if these are the things that you figured out and these are the hacks that you're implementing in your life.
Well, I think it's important because we made this observation when we were doing the show prep. Every decade seems to have doubled. Mm-hmm. So you can understand this is an amplifier. We talk about the power of compounding growth. It makes complete sense. Look, as humans, we think in a linear fashion, meaning that you're like 2 + 2 is 4. 4 + 2 is 6, and on. But no, it doesn't work that way. It actually grows exponentially, hence the doubling every decade. So yes, it's kind of a shock and awe when you see how big the 1% is, but it's not if you think about how much time these people have under their lives of making good decisions. I mean, think about Warren Buffett. We all know Warren Buffett is a multi-billionaire, one of the richest people on the planet. Do you realize though, he didn't make his first billion until he was actually in his 50s?
57, I believe.
So it is one of those things, pay attention to, you've got to be a good allocator of resources, time, money. That's what this big number is going to indicate.
All right, so let's look at the numbers. To be in the top 1% income-wise in your 50s, the average income is a little over $500,000 a year, right at $501,000. And if you want to be in the top 1% of folks in their 50s net worth-wise, the median net worth is $16,300,000. That's a big number. That is a difficult to achieve big number. But again, it shows how valuable compounding dollars through time can be.
Well, and I think this leads to what they figured out. And this is, I look at how much life changes from your 20s when you're first starting out to when you get a little more maturity about you. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these 50-somethings aren't very similar to me and others, where I know in my 20s, I saved really in a heavy-handed way because I had in my mind I was retiring between 50 and 55.
Sure.
As I've quickly approached that age that I originally had laid out as the ultimate end game, that seems like the opposite of what I want to do. And that's something that I think is interesting, that retirement may not be the end goal for a lot of these super successful people. You've heard us, it was the Simon Sinek book is The Infinite Game.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, that is one where, because a lot of business owners, when you start, you think, hey, I'm going to liquidate this business, at this age and then sell off in the sunset. But there's another mindset that says, no, I'm enjoying watching my people grow. I'm enjoying what we're doing to the world. It seems like we're actually having a positive impact, because that changes your mindset. And here's the data that supports that, Bo. 3 in 10 Americans plan to retire before they're 60. I fell into that.
That's the plan. That's what they think is going to happen.
But check this out. Most wealthy people don't plan to retire until age 70 or later. Not because they can't. I put the extra southern layer on that. But because they love what they do.
I think it's so interesting. All the time, we will sit in financial planning meetings with these people that we're describing, these folks who have extreme wealth built up. Was, hey, guess what? Congratulations. You're at financial independence. You don't have to go to work tomorrow, and you're going to be just fine. You can do all those things you want to do. And this is what we hear. Okay, yeah, that's great, but I kind of like going to work. There are people who depend on me. I get fulfillment out of doing that. I'm able to hire. I'm able to impact people's lives. I'm able to serve my customers well. It's great that I can stop working, but I don't think that I want to. I think folks in their 50s, especially this 1%, have figured out, I'm not working anymore because I have to keep working. I've solved the money problem. I'm working now because I get to keep working.
Well, and I like that kind of closes out this section with that abundance mindset. They also are very generous and they give back.
That's
mean,
right.
Dr. Stanley, Millionaire Next Door, Stop Acting Rich, other books, it affirmed that a lot of people who are in this echelon are actually very generous with not only their resources, but also their time.
So let's think about some of the hacks they figured out. This one I think is pretty obvious, but it's worth saying. They have figured out that they can get their money to work harder than they do. I mean, that is the actual definition of financial independence. When the army of dollar bills that you've built can go out and work harder and generate more income than you can with your hands and your back and your feet, then you have reached a point where you have trained your dollars to essentially replace you from an income generation standpoint. Folks in their 50s that fall in this 1% have figured that out. And they have often have multiple sources of income, whether it be portfolio income, whether it be rental income, whether it be residual business income. They have figured out how to let their dollars go out and do the working for them.
I think this point is interesting because I think I mentioned it earlier that most entrepreneurs or business owners and others in this higher echelon, they have what I call entrepreneur fear, meaning that they think it's going away at any point in time. We wish more NFL players and others who have these big incomes felt that way, but you see it with a lot of business owners. What I find interesting is when you are younger and you have this entrepreneurial fear where you're trying to build up assets outside of your company or your wages or your income, if you do that long enough, you will get to this next threshold, which is where your money can actually do the incredible things, not because you have to have the money do it, but so it can support your lifestyle, because you get to do stuff thinking outside of yourself in a very grand way. This is how you end up with some of these, what I call life-changing people who are creating, media, businesses. It's not because they have to do this for financial purposes. That doesn't hurt.
Right.
But it's just because they get to get outside of the necessity of money-making decisions to really the dreaming and really amping this thing up to a whole nother level.
But also in our experience, as we interact with these folks, one of the common concerns that they've voiced to us, one of the things we see is that they know how important it is not to screw up the next generation. They have been able to achieve what 99% of their peers have not been able to achieve. But in doing that, they also recognize the burden that can be to the next generation. And so that becomes one of their top priorities. How can I make sure that the success that I've had does not lead to the failure of those that are coming behind me?
I'm going to throw out a stat that all my trolls, they hate this when I say it, but then I'm going to give them a little bit of comfort because I'll show them how this all comes back around. When I share that millionaires, 80% of millionaires are first generation, meaning that, they didn't have gifts or other things that created that success. A lot of people get really upset at that. I mean, you'll see it in the comment section as soon as this plays out. But let me go ahead and give you guys some red meat too. Because this is a sad stat, Bo. I shared the 80% was first generation, but what's the rest of the story? The rest of the story is that by the second generation, meaning that wealth is created in the first generation, the second generation, 70% of the time, wealthy families lose it in the second generation, meaning their kids. And then third generation, grandkids, 90% of the time, 90% of the wealth is gone. So, you see how this cleansing cycle of wealth creation puts it right through the wash cycle from the beginning to the end. If you are one of these people that you don't even have to be in the top 1%. You just need to be in the top 20%. And you're actually on your path to building financial independence. You have children. Pay attention to this stat. Heed this stat. Create some scarcity in your children's lives so that they can hopefully be the exception, the 30% of the children who actually grow upon the assets, or the 10% of grandchildren who take wealth and actually build upon it. That's what I would like to see success be in the future, because that's a sad legacy that wealth disappears so quickly.
I think it's so interesting. Being in the top 1% should not be your goal. That's not a financial goal. That's not something that you should strive for. What you should strive for is being able to do what you want, the way you want, when you want to do it. Perhaps your goal doesn't require you to be in the 1%. Maybe doesn't require you to be in the 20%. Maybe your goals, the life that you want to lead, only requires you to be in the 50 percentile or the 60 percentile. That's okay. What I think is great though is we can look at these super high achievers. We can look at these folks that have achieved that 1% status, and we can take the things that they've done, the hacks that they've figured out, and apply them to our lives so that we can then achieve whatever that financial goal of ours is. The goal should not be, how do I get in the 1%? The goal should be, how do I get to use my money to be a tool to do the things that I want to do?